sent his wife and his 4 children, his 4 daughters, on a ship over to Europe. He had planned on joining them. About 4 or 5 days later, he was taking care of some business in Chicago. It was November 21st, 1873. He sends his wife over there and his 4 daughters, planning on meeting them in just a few days. And the ship that they were on collided with another ship. And that ship went down. That ship sank. And his 4 daughters were lost in the shipwreck. And the only one that survived was his wife. She was rescued by a small boat. So she gets to Europe and she sends him a telegram. They didn't have cell phones back then in the 1800s. And she says, I'm the only one that survived. Prior to this, he had lost everything in the Great Chicago Fire. So he was no stranger to tragedy. So he gets on a ship to meet his estranged wife from her 4 kids. And as they're driving over the spot, they're right over the spot where his 4 daughters were lost. And it was said that right there, at that point, he wrote the lyrics to this song, It Is Well With My Soul. This song doesn't come from a place of great joy. It comes from a place of great pain. And it's not well with my soul because everything's great. It is well with my soul because in spite of the fact that everything is not great, He is in control. And I'm wondering today if we could, for a moment today in worship, drive over the waters of our greatest pain and sing these words, It is well with my soul. When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it are, just to give God some praise this morning. Maybe you just need to give Him praise in spite of your circumstances, that it can still be well with your soul. If He's answered a prayer for you today, this week, this month, feel free to come up at any time. Put a ball in the jar. As we sing this last verse, and Lord, haste the day. And Lord, haste the day when my faith shall be sight. When the clouds be rolled back as a scroll, the trump shall resound, and the
this morning. Thank you for being here. I want to continue in some of the stuff I've been walking you through and sharing with you. It's going on here, and I want to do this first. I want to say congratulations. Kevin and Stacy were married yesterday afternoon, and they are off on their honeymoon and down south, and we want to be praying for them. And it was an exciting time, a great time, and a time of joy and celebration as they have decided to join with one another for the rest of their lives. I'd like you to read with me this morning, if you would stand this morning and read along with me this morning. Teacher, of all the laws, you're with me, which commandment is the greatest? The most important commandment is this: Hear, O Israel, the Eternal One is our God, and the Eternal One is the only God. You should agape the Eternal, your God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second great commandment is this: agape others in the same way you agape yourselves. There are no commandments more important than these. Thank you. You may be seated. Jesus is approached by a scribe, and the scribe wants to know of all the laws, which is the greatest. That's what he wants to know. He's doing what they did in that time and in that culture. The rabbis were very, very, very passionate about the law, and they had this way of taking numerous laws and bringing them down to like one sentence or one thing. And he wanted to know if Jesus could do that with all of the laws and all of the prophets and all the stuff that they believed in. And Jesus brought it down to this. And he says pretty much that we should agape, meaning love God. But how? We should love him with all of our heart, with all of our mind, with all of our soul, and with all of our strength. And the second is we should love others, agape, the way we love agape ourselves. And what Jesus says is there's no commandment, and there's nothing greater than this right here. There is nothing greater you could fashion your life after. There is nothing greater to emulate or to imitate or to try to live like Jesus did than this right here. He brings it all down to this, that it's simply this: love God, love yourself, and love others. That's really all that it comes down to. And it sounds so simplistic that when you say it, it's almost like there's got to be more, Pastor Bill. That it really just can't be that. There's got to be more than just that. Because what Jesus is trying to say is the fulfillment of the law, the purpose of the law was to lead us to this. That's the whole purpose of the law. To lead us to love God, to love ourselves, and to love others. And we've been looking at this word agape, and we've been trying to understand it and trying to apply it and trying to really see what we really think that it means. And the first thing you have to understand that God is love, and out of God comes this whole concept of love. And this idea that God doesn't do love, God just is love. It's his essence. It's everything about him. And in this whole issue of love, God longs for a relationship with us. Every single one of us. That is his whole purpose, is to build a relationship with every single one of us. And when we look at this idea of agape love and what we're really talking about and what we're trying to understand is, if all of the laws of the prophets hang on this word love, then exactly what are we really talking about? Because the Greek speaks of 4 different types of love. And it speaks of eros, and it speaks of philia, and it speaks of storge. And storge is a family love, and philia is a friendship love, and eros is more of kind of like a sensual, kind of erotic type of attraction type of love. But this 4th love, agape, is the word he's speaking of when he's talking about this greatest commandment. And it starts with this idea of it's sacrificial. See, agape love is sacrificially giving of yourself, which means it costs. But it doesn't cost the person who receives this love. It costs the person who is extending this love. This is Jesus, a picture of Jesus while he's on trial. And he's chained And he's brought before the religious leaders, and they're going to find him guilty. And Jesus is sacrificially giving of himself, and none of this happens without a choice. You don't just kind of mistakenly, sacrificially give yourself away. It's a choice. Agape love always is with the choice. It's intentional. It's purposeful. And Jesus exemplifies that for us. It is also a love that meets the need. It's not necessarily a love that meets your wants, but it's a love that meets the need. And what God was so good at, because he understands who we really are, he meets our greatest need, but not always our greatest want. That's why many times God's love is so misunderstood. So many people don't understand God's love because we're convinced that we know what we need, but it's really what we want. And when God doesn't meet that, we're really confused with God. It just doesn't make sense. And here's a picture of Jesus when the woman who's caught in the act of adultery is brought before him, and the religious leaders bring him before him and throw her down on the ground, and they say to Jesus, Jesus, the law says that according to the law of Moses, this woman should be stoned. That's what the law said. So if Jesus doesn't say stone her, then Jesus is going to break the law. And if Jesus breaks the law, then he can't be a very good person. What was the greatest need at that moment? Was the greatest need for this woman not to be stoned? Was that the greatest need? Not according to Jesus. The greatest need in that moment was simply this. He agreed with the law. He did. He agreed with the law that this woman should be stoned. So what he did was he just helped those who can stone her. So what he said was anybody who is without sin can throw the stone. Anybody not with sin? Nope. I guess nobody can stone. Who had the greatest need in the moment? The religious leaders to realize they shouldn't be judging, or the woman who thought she was going to be stoned? He picked the religious leaders. He showed them their true greatest need. See, that's why Jesus, in the way he loves us, is so misunderstood at times. Because we're convinced we know something when in reality we really don't know what we think we know. Many times our prayers are filled with what we are asking God to do and what we believe is really best and what we need God to do. And when God doesn't do that, we start to wonder, does God love us? Does God even care? Or is God busy trying to meet our greatest need in the midst of a circumstance that we don't know what our greatest need is? That's what agape love looks like. And last but not least is God longs to pour this love out through us as people. See, that's what God really longs to do. And many times for us as a church, one of the things we've done is we have this food closet. And the whole purpose of having this food available is when people come to us and they're in need of food, we're able to help them with their physical, earthly needs. It's something that we've adopted and we've lived to, and many times we've been able to help people out in times when they had nothing else. It's God pouring himself out through us to others, meeting their needs. It's sacrificial. You're the ones that help us have this. You're the ones that contribute to this. It doesn't just happen. It takes a lot of people and a lot of effort and a lot of coordination to have this to be able to give to other people. But agape love isn't like any other type of love you can think about. It's not comparable to any other love in the world. And when Jesus is saying the greatest commandment is to love, what he's saying is to love God the Father like this, sacrificially. It's going to cost you to love the Father the way the Father should be loved. It's going to be a choice. You're not just going to happen to love him like that. And when the Father wants to love through you to others, he's going to want to love to meet their need and not necessarily their want. Normally, when you meet someone's want and you give them what they want, they think what about you? You're the greatest person in the world. Love you to death. But if you were to meet their need and their need wasn't their want, what are they going to think about you? I don't ever want you to help me again. Do you really want Jesus to love through you? Do you really want Jesus to use your life? Be careful. Because it ain't going to look like you think it's going to look. It's why it's so misunderstood, and we really don't get the whole concept behind this great commandment, because we really don't understand the love that Jesus is talking about. We've been journeying and looking through the book of Genesis and looking at the story of Adam and Eve, and we kind of see here where very clearly that God is instructing Adam. He creates Adam, he places Adam in the garden, and Adam becomes the person that is going to be his partner in the continual ongoing creation of the garden and caring for the garden. He becomes like a co-creator alongside of God, and God gives him this one instruction: eat freely, Adam, from all the trees in the garden. I only require that you abstain from eating the fruit of one tree, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Beware, the day that you eat of this tree, you will certainly die. That's the instruction that he gives to Adam on that day. He wants him to know, but everything else is yours. Do anything else you want to do. Eat all of the fruit and as much of the fruit you want in the whole garden. Just stay away from this one tree. That's all I'm saying to you. So Adam and Eve are created, and Adam and Eve are enjoying relationship with one another and with God, and they're dependent upon God. They need God. They spend time with God. They're drawing life from God. God is their life source. And all of a sudden, the one day when they decide to violate relationship by eating this fruit, see, eating the fruit was really not the problem. It was what eating the fruit meant. It meant that I'm violating my relationship with God the Father, which leads me independent from God, not dependent upon God. See, so many of us look at sin, the idea of things. We've made sin a thing. In the Bible it says, thou shalt not. And we attach sin to a thing instead of understanding that the thou shalt not was given by the creator of the world. And because he's God and we're not, he gets to establish that. And when we violate what he says, it's not the eating of the fruit that was the problem. It was violating God in eating the fruit. See, sin is always a violation of a relationship. It always violates someone. That's what sin is. It's not a thing. It's a violation of personhood. And they go from dependency to independency. And now, all of a sudden, they're hiding in the garden, and all of a sudden, for the first time ever in their life, they're hiding from the very person that has given them life, their life source. They're no longer connected to their life source. It's the first time they've ever experienced this. Well, we also know that God very famously created them, and when he created them, he said to them that you're good. He didn't say you're good because. He didn't say you're good when. He didn't say you're good if. He just said you are good. That's what he told them. And the whole idea behind this is that he defines life for them. In the whole structure of the garden, God was busy saying what? This is good, this isn't good. This is good, this isn't good. And God defined life. That's the whole purpose of living in the garden. God gave them life and he defines it. And therefore, their identity is drawn from God. And when your identity comes from God, you're free to be you. Because he's the only one that gets to define you. That's the whole point. And why there was such unbelievable freedom in the garden. But once again, we see that they decided to eat this fruit. And in eating this fruit, they violated this relationship with God the Father. And the next thing you know, they're in the garden and they have the greatest question of their life. Who are we? See, if I'm no longer connected to God the Father in a dependency relationship, then there has to mean something different. See, I'm getting my identity from someone else because someone or something else is now giving me identity. Someone else or something else is defining me. And all of a sudden, there's this phenomenal dissonance going on inside of Adam and Eve because Adam and Eve were created to be connected to the Father, drawing life from the Father. And God defined the life, and they lived in the definitions, and they had identity, and all of that now is gone. They don't know who they are. They're looking at each other. They're hiding from God. They're extremely, extremely not living in harmony with themselves, let alone one another and God. And of course, we also know that in the garden they were naked, and the nakedness symbolizes vulnerability and transparency. See, when God the Father is the one who gives you life and sustains your life, and your identity comes from God, then you're free to be vulnerable and transparent with anybody in the world, because no one else gets to define you. See, when God's the one that defines you, you have such freedom to really be you and to be real in life. And they're living in that. But as we know, of course, they violated relationship. And when they violated relationship, of course, the first thing that they do when they talk to God the Father is Adam blames Eve for all the problems. Adam very clearly states, it wasn't my fault. I didn't do it. It's this woman. And to be honest with you, God, it's really you, see, because you're the one that created her. See, God, if you wouldn't have created her, then I wouldn't be where I am today, and I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today. But it's you. It's you alone, God. See, you created her, and she led me astray, and now it's both of your faults. But the one thing it isn't my fault. See, the one thing about this whole idea is that we go to this point of that we are shamed people. See, when you do something that's wrong and you become aware of it, you're embarrassed. See, embarrassment means I've done something wrong and people are going to find out about it. Shame is not I've done something wrong, there's something wrong with me. See, shame is not about what you do. Shame is about there's some type of defect that you've said is about you. There's something about you that isn't really the way it should be. There's something maybe about your appearance or maybe about who you are. See, and all of a sudden, see, now you're shamed. So what do when you're shamed? You hide yourself. That's what you do. You put something over you to cover the areas of your life that you want no one to see, and you blame everybody else in the world for why you are the way you are. But the one thing about where they end up is it's never their fault. Adam blamed God and Eve. Eve blamed the serpent. But it's not our fault. And right now, they're totally, completely, utterly living in disharmony within themselves. There's just chaos and disorder within themselves, and they're going to leave the garden because God is going to make them leave the garden. And the one thing I want to help you out with, because here's the real key to understanding something in your own personhood. What did they lose in the garden? See, if you don't know what they lost in the garden, then you don't know what you're looking for. See, this is the whole point of where I'm trying to help you out with. They lose something in the garden, and whatever you lose in the garden is what you're missing in yourself as a person, because we are the seed of Adam and Eve. See, we're born of the seed of Adam and Eve, and therefore we're born of them in their state of being when they left the garden. And so many people at this point in life don't really understand, and we as believers have so many different answers to this question. And I know a lot of people are so excited about when they supposedly got saved. Man, they're going to heaven. But you didn't lose heaven. That's not what you lost in the garden. So that's not the answer to the question. You're not getting heaven because you lost heaven. You didn't lose heaven. It's not what you're getting. I know so many people that Christians keep telling about the streets of gold and the mansion in the sky and all the things that you're going to have when you get to heaven, but that's not what you lost. That's not what you're going to get. What did you lose? See, if you don't know what you lost in the garden, then what did you get when you supposedly got saved? What did you get from Jesus when you got saved? Because you didn't lose heaven. It's not what you lost. And I know so many people, that everything is about. One day, Pastor Bill. One day, Pastor Bill. Pastor Bill, one day there'll be no more tears. Pastor Bill, one day all of this is going to be over. One day, Pastor Bill. And we're all looking to that one day when you're going to live in heaven and walk the streets of gold. And I guess you're going to, I don't know what you're going to do there. Well, what are you going to do between now and that day? Oh, that's right. You're just waiting to go to heaven. Because that's what salvation means, right? I got saved. And I'm just waiting to go to heaven. Is that what it means? Is that what this says? I got saved. I'm going to heaven. I'm just waiting for the bus to pick me up. And in between now and then, what? Well, I'm just in a perpetual state of waiting. Interesting. So what you lost in the garden was heaven, and what Jesus is going to give you now in your earthly life is heaven again. Interesting. Adam and Eve were drawing their life from the Father, and as a result of that, they had an identity. And they were able to be naked and vulnerable with each other. The place that they were in wasn't the place, and the place in and of itself is this great place. No. What made the Garden of Eden so great? God. His presence. It wasn't the place. See, we've got this idea. It's about this place. Like you're getting this place back. You're not getting a place back because you never lost the place. That's not what you lost when we were removed from the garden. There's something we lost, but it wasn't the Garden of Eden. That's not what you lost. The only reason the Garden of Eden was so phenomenal was because God lived there. But what'd you lose? Now they're just searching for life. They're searching for identity, and they're searching for love. That's what they're doing. That's what our first parents started out with right there. And every generation that comes along continues that search, continues looking for life and identity and love. That's what everybody's looking for. Everyone's looking for a purpose in life. Everybody's looking for who they are, and everyone's looking for someone to love them. See, that's the whole thing. Everyone's searching for this. Everyone's looking for this. Everybody's hoping for this. And that's why when we find someone that we think that loves us, it's so important to us because it fills one of the greatest desires of our life. And when them relationships end, it's devastating. Why? Because it isn't just something. It's part of what we're searching for in life. We want to be loved. We need to be loved. We long to be loved by another person. And how do we want to be loved? We want someone to love us with all of the good and the bad and the ugly, right? That's what we long for. And when we're not loved like that, something inside of us aches. It aches. Because you're meant to be loved for who you are, not for what you do or you don't do. See, everything about the garden is exactly what you're still looking for in life. It's what we're looking for. But everybody, I can't say it, that's it. Let me say, most Christians I talk to only talk to me about heaven. I'm going to heaven. I can't wait for heaven. When I get to heaven, one day it's going to be great in heaven. Well, what happens between when you met Jesus and when you go to heaven? Did you get a spiritual recliner sent to you from Jesus? And you just sit in a spiritual recliner and put your feet up and that's it for the rest of your earthly existence? I just wonder. Makes me wonder. See, these are kind of the questions I think about. And I'm like, Like, what am I really looking for? What as a human being am I longing for to happen? And see, it's all about this. See, when they walk out of the garden and all of a sudden now they're looking to find a life source. That's what they're looking for. See, because in the garden they had a life source. He was God. Out of the garden they don't have a life source. And they've got this plug for their life, and they're running around and they want to plug it into someone or something, because the someone or the something is going to give them meaning and purpose and give them the life they're looking for. And the issue is, over the course of a human life, we plug into and unplug and plug into and unplug probably millions of times looking for life. Because that's what we're all looking for. We're looking for a life source. That's what we're looking for, because what did we lose in the garden? We lost our life source. We violated relationship with God the Father. We're no longer plugged into God. We're not plugged in anymore. So our earthly existence, we run around plugging into people, jobs, hobbies, all sorts of things in life, trying and hoping they're going to give us some type of meaning. We plug into religion thinking that's the answer. We do all of these things looking for life. That's what we're looking for. Just looking for life. And when we can't find life, or we find it for fleeting moments, because as soon as you plug into something for a little while, there's this great utopia, and then the utopia just goes away, and then it's just life again. Jobs don't mean as much after you've been in them for a while. Relationships don't mean as much. Hobbies don't mean as much. Religions don't mean as much, because they can't supply what you're looking for. They'll never satisfy the longing of your spirit. See, we're created with a human spirit, and your human spirit is longing for something that this world can't supply. Man, but we're busy plugging, man. Plug. Nah, that's not enough. Plug. Nah, for a little while. Let's plug that. See, like, see, we're always asking this question: am I good or am I bad? And all of the things, it's probably the greatest thing I get asked by people. Pastor Bill, is that wrong? What I did, is that wrong? Pastor Bill, was that good what I did? Was that right what I did? See, it's innate inside of us. See, we're created, and when we were created, and in the garden, what did God say about us? You're just good. What does your spirit long for? To be good. The problem is now, what defines whether you're good or not? What defines it is whatever you're plugged into. See, that's what gets to say whether you're good or you're not good. See, defining life is the big piece of identity. And what happens to all of us, we're running around and we slap these labels on things. And this is good, and this is good, and this isn't good. And all of our experiences get a good or bad label on them. And we're busy doing this definition job that we were never created to do. We were never created to define life. Who defined life in the garden? God. Who's defining life outside the garden? We are. It's kind of like this. You ever notice when someone dies, we label that as bad. Death is not good. We label death as bad. But your faith would say to you, what about death? It's the greatest thing in the world. Why? Because where are you once you die? Right? We believe we're with Jesus. You guys do believe that, right? I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you don't believe that. Then why is death bad? Why have we labeled death bad if what our belief tells us about our faith, it's everything we ever wanted? But we define death as bad, yet death gives you the ultimate thing our faith is longing for. So why is death bad? See, we were in a job we were never meant to be in. We got power that we were never meant to have. And we're confused. And then we come to this whole thing, man, and, you know, we're just filled with shame. That's what we are. We're filled with shame. You know, when we get into relationships with other people, what we do is we tell them all the things about us that make us look bad, right? Isn't that how we start relationships out? I want to tell you all of my weaknesses. I want to tell you all the bad things. You know that first date you went out on, you remember that? I want to tell you that when I snore really loud when I sleep at night, and I'm probably going to have to wear a machine someday. So I just want to let you know that if we ever end up married, it's going to be really bad for you. I want you to also know that I'm kind of a mama's boy. You know what I mean? So like, I really love my mom, and my mom's really important. If we ended up in a long-term relationship, I want you to know my mom's value is very important to me. It may be more important than your value. I want to let you know some of the things about me that maybe that might just get in your way. Isn't that, don't you remember that on the first date? You were sharing with the person all of the things about you that might not be the best things, right? That's what you were doing. No, we didn't do that. We told them all the things that were great about us. That's what we did. We told them, man, all of the good qualities. Because we're shamed people. We can't tell them our bad things. Because if we told them our bad things from the beginning, what might they have decided? I ain't hooking up with you. You got too many issues. We're shamed people. It's what we are. So therefore, we blame everybody else in the world for our problems. It's just what we do. See, shamed people can't own stuff. We have to blame someone else. It's what we do. One of the biggest things I notice about people is we blame our parents. See, that's the number one people that get blamed. It's our parents. See, it's something our parents did or didn't do. It's something our parents this, our parents that, our parents this. I don't know if you know this or not, but you've been out of your parents' house now for how many years and you're still blaming your parents? Are you serious? You ever going to grow up? Like it's your mom and dad's fault? And you've been out of the house for how long now? I got adult children. All of my children now are adults. And sometimes when we get together, Thanksgiving, we get together, holidays, the old stories come out, you know? I love the stories when we're sitting around the table. And they want to relive and talk about maybe one time or another that me or Terry disciplined one of them. And they tell this story, and it was like, and I'm sitting there trying to remember, like, really, is that what we did? I'm scratching my head. I don't remember it that way. Maybe I'm wrong. And all these things about what we did and how, oh my God, we were so strict, and oh my God, we were so this, and oh my God, we were. And I look at my 5 kids and I say, you guys turned out pretty well. Why do we blame our parents for almost everything? Because we're shamed people with no identity, and therefore we can't accept any responsibility. And see, so what we do is we self-protect ourselves from relationships. We only give as much of ourselves away that we think someone else will like, but we never give ourselves totally away. See, there's pieces of us that we really struggle to give away to somebody else, because if you really knew this about me, you would not want to be with me. So there's this one closet in my interior that I'm never going to open. And this is what human life looks like right here. We plug into someone or something, we unplug. And whatever we plug into, we ask them to answer the question, am I good or am I bad? And then we run around filled with shame, blaming everybody else in our life and protecting ourselves from the very thing we're created for, which is intimacy. See, your human spirit longs for intimacy. And anything less than that will never satisfy your human spirit. Nothing. Nothing. No relationship, how good you think it is, if it is not really living in intimacy, will ever satisfy the longing of your human spirit. It can't do it. Because you're created for something. That's the whole point. You've been created for something. I'm just wondering, what did you lose when you left the garden? Because it's the only thing that will ever bring peace and contentment to your human spirit. But if you don't know what you lost, you're running around trying to find something that you're never going to find. There's the point. That's what it's all about. See, I take you to a very familiar passage, John 3:16. It says, "For God so agape the world." See, it's another agape passage. See, God so agape the world. He didn't eros the world. He didn't philo the world. He didn't storge the world. He agape the world. See, and once you put that word in context in the scripture, everything changes about that scripture. It's not just God kind of loved one day. Yeah, I kind of in love with the people of the world. Kind of in love with them people, or just, I think I'll love them people down there. No. See, this is a different type of love. See, this love implies something. This love means something. This love means something radical has to happen. When you agape love, it's radical. It's radical. That's what happens. That's the very thing that happens. So what we see is that he gave. God is the source of what Jesus offers. See, God in Jesus is now going to come to the world with something to offer. His only begotten Son. See, God just isn't going to kind of give something or give something that was not costly. See, because once we put the word agape to it, it means sacrificial love. That's what it means. And that's exactly what happens here. He's going to sacrificially give his only begotten Son. And it's a choice. He knows what he's doing, and he knows what the cost is, and he knows it is going to pain him tremendously. But once you say agape love, everything changes in the game. All the rules are different. See, you can eros love and kind of give, but not give that it really costs you. You can feel a love, and you can give a lot, but you don't have to give sacrificially and feel a love. And in storge love, you can love, but you don't have to. See, when you say agape, it implies something. You are going to give something, and you are going to pay the cost for what you're going to give. And you may never get anything in return. It's not conditional. It's not based on something. God the Father chooses to sacrificially give his only begotten Son to the people of the world. God has given Jesus something to offer to the world. That whoever believes, now that PAP is a tense in the Greek. So it's present active participle, which implies that belief cannot be a one-time thing. See, this belief cannot be, I believed, or it cannot be, this belief led me to do one thing, or this belief would mean I'm kind of. See, this belief means that you are constantly, forever and ever and ever, in this sense of belief, and it's leading you to something very different. See, I've heard so many preachers do this when they preach, and they say, listen, if you just come down here and you just kneel and you just ask Jesus to forgive you of your sins and you pray the sinner's prayer, you will be forgiven and you will receive eternal life. Will you? Does a man have the authority to tell you you will receive eternal life? Nope. Can you pray the sinner's prayer? Yep. Does it mean you get eternal life? Nope. Doesn't mean that. Well, Pastor Bill, you're confusing me. I'm meaning to. Thank you. Because it all is about the PAP. See, the day that you said you wanted to know Jesus and you went to meet him, you might have gotten up in a service or stood in a service. You might have came to an altar. You might have bowed. See, you had to make a decision. See, belief implies a choice. See, belief implies you got to get up and you got to move. See, belief implies there's action. See, belief implies it's not stagnant. There's nothing stagnant in faith. It doesn't mean you're at this place and everything's... See, belief implies you're moving forward. You're constantly moving. You're constantly going forward. And that's why the whole premise of, hey, I got heaven and I'm in my spiritual recliner waiting for heaven to come, doesn't imply, it doesn't mean you have what you think you have. So what do you have? The Bible's very clear. Just because you want to be saved doesn't get you saved. The only person that can draw you to faith is God the Father. And if He's not drawing you, who drew you? The church? Did the church tell you you were saved? Did the church stamp you and tell you you were good? We don't have that authority. Whoever is in an ongoing conversion experience in Him shall not perish but have eternal life. See, here becomes the tricky part, is we're all alive, right? We all are experiencing a life. So the life He's offering isn't what you already have. That's not what He's come to offer. You already have life. He's not coming here to offer you the life you have. He's coming to offer you a thing called aliveness. See, He wants to give you the life you forfeited when you left the garden. He's coming to give you back what you lost in the garden. That's what Jesus is offering. He's not offering heaven. He's not offering you to sit in your easy chair and to rest and to say, hey, I'm in. No. He's offering you an ongoing conversion experience that never ends. That implies you're going to keep on moving and keep on going and keep on going. There is no, hey, I've made it, I'm in, I just get to sit here. Doesn't exist. It's one of the biggest lies the Church of Jesus Christ has told us. Doesn't exist. See? Because He wants to meet the need. And the need of every human being is to get back what they lost. The need is not heaven. Let me help you out with something. Wherever God the Father is, it's heaven. His presence changes everything. You're not getting a place. That's not what you're getting when you get saved. You get the life we lost in the garden. You get the life source. You get the identity, and you get to be vulnerable because you now know who you are. And nobody else gets to get in on it. Ain't that awesome? Our greatest need is we're alive, but we don't have aliveness. We don't have it. We're just existing. You ever notice how sometimes the grind of life just gets so, oh my God, I got to do this again? Do you have any aliveness today? When you met Jesus and you got saved, did you get any aliveness? Or did you just get heaven? Because Jesus didn't come to offer you heaven. It's not what He came to give you. He came to give you your life source back. That's what Jesus does. So He can pour His love out through you. See, to believe and to receive this life is a participating sports event. That's what it is. You have to participate in it. You're not in just because somebody said you're in. Because there's no place to be into. You didn't get it in. You got aliveness. That's what you got. That's the only thing He offers is the life you lost. Is that what you got when you got saved? Did you get that? Because if you didn't, what did you get? Eternal security? And if I'm eternally secure, then I'm in no matter what I do. That's the belief. You're into what? You're in heaven. You didn't get heaven. It's not what you got. So where are you in at? What he offered you was what you lost in the garden. Is that what you really want from Jesus? I mean, let's just be honest today. Because if you receive this life, this aliveness, it's going to really radically inconvenience your life. It's going to mean you're no longer in control. It's going to mean you're no longer making the decision. See, he's going to define life for you. You don't get to define it anymore. See, most people, what you think salvation means is not what it means. And I'm wondering just what you got when you asked him to be your Savior. What'd you receive? A spiritual recliner from Lazy Boy. That is so awesome. And I'm in, and it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't matter whether I obey the Bible. It doesn't matter whether I sin. It just doesn't matter because I got a straight go-to-heaven card on the Monopoly board of Jesus. That's amazing. In John chapter 13, we get into the Last Supper scene, and Jesus comes in, and he's going to wash the disciples' feet. This is how it all starts. And see, the problem with this scene is that in the culture of that time, when you would journey from place to place, because they wore sandals, your feet would get dusty. So in everybody's house, there was a servant, and the servant washed your feet when you came in the door. Well, in this Last Supper scene, guess what they never hired? They never hired a servant. So nobody washed the feet. Well, Jesus wants to tell you what it means to receive this life that he's offering. It means you become the servant to the people. So he wraps a towel around his waist, and he gets down on his hands and knees, and he starts scrubbing the dust of the road off the boys' feet. That's what it means when you receive this aliveness. You're a servant. You're not here to be served. You're here to serve. See, it's the transformation that happens. Well, he also tells them, hey, I want to let you know, someone's going to betray me. One of you boys here is going to betray me. I just want to let you know where I'm headed and what's coming down the road, so when it happens, you're not all shocked. And I just want you to get this and understand this. So he tells the story, and then he says, but I want to offer you comfort. He's telling them, I'm going to the Father now. I'm getting ready to go back to be with the Father. That's what he's telling them. That's where I'm headed. That's where I'm going. That's what's going to happen to me. I'm going back to the Father. That's where I'm going. And the disciples are confused and they're dazed. They're just confused. First, you wash our feet. You're the leader. Leaders don't wash feet. And then you tell us one of us is going to betray you. We're all for you. And then you tell us you're leaving us. So Thomas says, Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way to get there? How can we know the path? You act like we know. You act like we know everything you're talking about. And Jesus, we don't know nothing. We don't know where you're going. What are you talking about? You're confusing us. Leaders don't serve. They don't do it. We will not betray you. That's not the kind of guys we are. And now you're leaving us. And we need you. Jesus says to Thomas, I am the way. I am the truth. And I am the energy of life. See, aliveness is different than what you think it is. No one can come to the Father except through me. Nobody. Nobody has access to the Father except through me. If you know me, you know the Father. Rest assured now, you know him and have seen him. Why? Because you've seen me. Jesus does this unbelievable thing. He first declares this I am statement. See, the I am statement is very powerful in the Bible. What he's saying is that he's giving a self-revelation. He's saying something about who he really is in this statement. All of the I am statements are preceded by what the God the Father said about himself to the prophets. And now Jesus repeats the same statement. Jesus identifies himself with a symbol that represents Near Eastern religion and human experience. What he's saying to them is, the I am statements say, I'm the bread of life. I can give you life and sustain life for you. I'm light in your world because this world is dark. I'm light. I'm the gate for the sheep. The only way in is through me. And I'm the good shepherd because I'm going to care for you, but I'm not going to give you what you necessarily want, but I'm going to give you everything you need. He also says, I'm the resurrection and the life. What he's saying is, see, the power of death is no longer going to be the deciding factor. I'm going to break the power of death. I am the way, the truth, and the life, and I am the true vine. See, anything outside of me, you're no longer connected to the source. I'm the only source. Through these common symbols, Jesus declares that people's spiritual needs and human longings are only met in him. He's the only one that can really bring peace and contentment to your human spirit. Nothing else will ever meet that need. Nothing. No one. Nothing. He's the only one. So he starts off with this. See, within Jewish tradition, the way denotes a lifestyle of the wise. Those who live in accordance with the teaching of the sages. Those who were the rabbis and the instructors and the teachers. See, the Jewish thought was this is not a pathway or a way. This is really a lifestyle. And when we look in the book of the Psalms, the way refers to a metaphor to describe a life that's lived in accordance with the will of God the Father. See, so many people are looking for a path. They're looking for the how-tos. That's not what Jesus is talking about. He's talking about a lifestyle. That's what the way really means. In this context, the way is not used strictly as the route to somewhere, but as an expression of Jesus' faithful unity with his Father. See, there's a way, and the way is follow my example. It's the only way. There is no other way to the Father. Follow my example. It's all about relationship and unity with the Father. See, and there's also this idea that Jesus was the truth. And it's kind of like this idea that we have this Bible, and we have this Word, and we have the first 5 books of the Old Testament, which was the law. But in all reality, Jesus is that very thing in the flesh. To recognize Jesus as the truth is to affirm that the Word became flesh. And Jesus, the truth of God, is now available to the world. He made the Word, he made everything in the Word become flesh. Jesus doesn't reject the truth of God. He exemplifies the truth of God in his lifestyle. He doesn't just teach it. That's not what Jesus is about. Jesus isn't trying to teach you about this. He's trying to teach you, follow my lifestyle. That's what he's doing. To have a relationship with Jesus is to encounter the truth. And the one thing I want to help you out with this morning, if you know the truth, it will set you free. That's what the truth does. So many people claim to know the truth, but yet you're still in bondage. How can you know the truth and still be in bondage? It doesn't meet. See, because our idea of what Jesus offers is so contrary to what he really offers. Salvation doesn't mean you get out of hell free card. That's not what it's about. It's not about an easy boy recliner and you get to just sit and do nothing. See, you're restored and you're given something back that you lost. That's what life means. That's what Jesus is offering. That's the only thing he's offering. So what did you get? What car lot did you buy your salvation from? There's only one car dealer. It's Jesus that offers what he offers. That's it. So Jesus offers life, which means he's going to give you back the passion and the purpose and the direction and the meaning that you forfeited and we lost in the garden. He's not coming to give you something for your future. He's coming to give you something for your now. He wants to give back everything we lost right now, here, right on earth. That's what he's talking about. Aliveness, the life that Jesus offers, restores us. We receive what we lost. We are now alive, which implies that we now are going to bear responsibly being the image of God the Father to the world. We're going to join in with him in his creative healing work. That's what it implies. When we talk about this aliveness, where we desire, see, our desire changes. We desire to imitate and reflect God's generous desires. We now work with Him. We become partners with Him to create and to bless and to help and to serve and to care for and to save and to enjoy the life we have right now. That's what He came. That's the offer. Nothing else is the offering. So I'm just wondering, what did you get when you got saved? Because if you're not alive and not experiencing aliveness, if you're not part of being in the recreation pattern with the Father, if you're not alongside the Father blessing and helping and serving and caring for, if the passion you lost isn't restored, if the direction and the meaning you lost isn't restored, then just what did you get? And I just wonder. And the thing that saddens me is this. We've all come to settle for what our Western culture calls salvation. That's what we came to settle for. And coming to church and being good and throwing a little bit of money in the offering plate and taking communion, that all now implies that you're saved. It's not what the Bible refers to. The Bible says you're going to get something back that you lost. And the only thing you lost was what you lost in the garden. So everything else you thought you got when you got saved, where'd you get that from? Because He didn't come to do that. He came to offer you to become alongside of Him and be a partner in agape loving the world, which means He's going to ask you to be sacrificially giving of your life. He's going to ask you to choose to live a sacrificially giving life. He's going to ask you to meet the needs of people in your life and not their wants. That's what He's going to ask you to do. And what did they do to Jesus when He loved them with agape love? Oh, they crucified Him. What do you think is going to happen to you when you stop meeting people's wants? See, I just really wonder, what did we buy into? What did you get saved from when you got saved? Paul writes in Ephesians, to be made alive in the attitude of your mind. See, there's a radical transformation in your mind when you receive this aliveness that Jesus offers. Your mindsets change. It's not the same. And what I've watched is people have been able to accept the salvation of Jesus while still being the same person. It's impossible to do. If you're still the same after you receive this, I want to let you know, then what did He save you from? I don't know. And then to put on the new self. See, there's this radical new self that you become, and it's created to be like God. See, when you receive this aliveness, you are automatic. You didn't do anything. You're automatically like God. Because you had nothing to do with this. Because it's not you. And if that radical change hasn't not only happened, but is continuing to happen, then what did you receive? Because the Bible says belief is present, active, participle. It's an ongoing conversion experience. And you never arrive this side of heaven. Do you also know in the Bible, retirement is not in there? So I'd like to know from some of you, how did you get out of using your gifts and talents in the church? That's called sin. It's willful, it's deliberate, And according to the book of Hebrews, it separates you from the life source of God the Father. See, if you really want to know, we've altered in our Western culture the real true meaning of what we receive so all of us would be comfortable with God. Are you comfortable in the presence of the most holiness of God? Are you? Every time God appeared, what did somebody do? They got flat on their face and put their face to the ground because they were in awe of the reverence of God and weren't comfortable with God. Are you comfortable? I'm just wondering, people, what did we receive? Does your life right now look like what I've just been telling you? You've received this aliveness. You've been restored. You got your passion back, your zeal back. You got your direction back and your meaning back. You're now a partner with God in creating and blessing and saving and helping. I mean, is that the life you're living? Or are you just waiting for Jesus to take you to heaven? Because I want to know how to get in on that. Because what Jesus has been doing in my life, I'm not sitting in no recliner. But I want to know how to get what you guys got. I'd love to have that. See, we're just about ready to take communion today. And as we take communion, and we're going to participate in the sacrament of grace, I want you to know something this morning. See, this whole exercise is about people who really, really, really have received life from the Father. That's what it's about. We receive this aliveness from the Father. And when you receive this aliveness from the Father, the first thing you want to do is thank Him. You want to thank Him for this aliveness. You're not thanking Him for heaven because that's not what He gave you. He never came to give you that because you never lost that. What you lost was your life source, meaning God the Father. That's what you lost. And have you plugged back into that? And is He defining your life now, or are you defining your life now? And are you free to be intimate with people, or are you still self-protecting? See, because all of them other things show you that you're plugged into something, but it's not the Father. But people who have this aliveness, during this thing we're going to do, this sacrament, they want to give thanks. Even in the midst of some really, really difficult situations. Because they realize the one thing, as difficult as this situation is, if I did not have the life and aliveness that Christ has given me, this situation would literally kill me. But because of the aliveness of the Spirit of God, I can endure this situation. That's what it's saying. And therefore, I want to thank Him. I want to thank Him for heaven because He didn't promise me that. He promised me life with Him. What did you get promised when you got saved? Think about this. You get to plug back into the life source, a holy God, while still keeping one foot in all of your sinfulness. That's what you got promised. It doesn't exist in the Bible. Communion. And the word I want to talk about today is Eucharist. And Eucharist is all about thanksgiving and celebration. Today, communion is about celebrating the restoring life that Jesus offers to us. Aliveness. It's a life source. We get identity and we get intimacy back. You don't have to work for it. You don't have to earn this. You don't have to be good. It's the gift of life given back to you through the life giver, Jesus Christ. Is that what you have? Is that what you received? Or did you receive heaven? Because heaven will be a great place if Jesus is there. Because wherever Jesus is, guess what we're in? We're in that paradise setting of the garden. That's the point. The garden wasn't the paradise. God the Father made it the paradise. So even in the midst of your most painful experience, if he's there, you have paradise. You have it. See, part of that mentality of I got heaven is Jesus is never going to let me suffer. He's never going to let me experience pain. Mm-hmm. How's that working for you? Faulty theology that we believe and base our life on. Just want to know how it's working for you today. We're going to prepare to take communion this morning. And I really want to say something this morning. If you're not really celebrating what I'm talking this morning about, maybe you ought to not take communion today. Because maybe you don't know that you're even saved today. Maybe you don't even know what spiritual life is. Because just because you're a member of this church, I want to let you know, if you are, in front of Peter on that day, don't show your credentials to this church. It won't get you in. Or any other church you joined. Or just because you got baptized doesn't mean you're in. See, all of these sacraments and rituals don't guarantee you nothing without the life. That's the only thing that matters. And I'm really cautioning you today. Are you celebrating what I've been talking about? Or are you celebrating heaven? Because he came to give you back what you lost. He didn't come to give you something you're thinking about over there. It's not what he came to give. So if you'll give us a moment to prepare this morning, Pastor Tim, if you can come and help me this morning.